that fatwa is reversible if conditions arise that represent an existential threat to the Islamic Republic. And officials in the inner circle of the supreme leaders say that those conditions exist today. So what I've said, and I'm 100% convinced that I'm right because I'm simply quoting the words of these senior Iranian officials, is that Iran has made a decision that when the time is necessary, that they will reverse this fatwa. That decision's already been made, meaning there won't be a debate. They've made a decision that when the time comes, that fatwa will be reversed. And when the fatwa is reversed, according to the statements made by various Iranian officials, Iran will be able to create and deploy a nuclear bomb very, very quickly, in a matter of days. So there it is. They don't have a bomb right now because they haven't made that political decision. So the fatwa is still in place. But if the time comes where the political realities manifest themselves in a way that Iran feels that their existential survival is on the table, that fatwa will be reversed. That decision has already been made, that the fatwa is reversible. So it will be reversed. And when that decision's made, you don't make the decision to reverse the fatwa without saying, and then what? So they have all the pieces together to produce a nuclear bomb, minus the fissile core, which they will produce using highly enriched uranium, which they will be able to make in a matter of days. They have large stockpiles of 60% enriched uranium hexafluoride. They have installed the 1,400 centrifuge cascade using the IR6 and IR8 centrifuges. These are, extremely efficient centrifuges, far more efficient than the first generation centrifuges Iran, had installed and were being monitored by the IAEA. So what normally would take weeks, if not months, can now be done in hours, if not days. And it's that quick. They will have sufficient, sufficient quantities of highly enriched uranium hexafluoride, which they can then rapidly turn into metal, and then that metal can be installed into a gun design weapon, put on a warhead, and fired within a matter of days. That's where we are today. How you want to frame that is up to you. How George Galloway wants to frame it, it's up to him. I'm just telling you, that's where we are today.
All right. Next question comes from William McQuaid in Seattle. Iran didn't destroy Israeli airfields before Israeli aircraft could return to base after an attack on Iran, but you said they would. Iran tragically thinks this is the same old exchange and will eventually leave Israel intact to conduct their forever wars simply because Israel has a nuclear threat. Israel fully knows this is their trump card for all war scenarios. What's your realistic solution to Israel's nuclear trump card?
Well, first of all, Mr. McQuaid, if you're going to quote me accurately. I said that if Israel launches strikes against Iran's nuclear infrastructure, that Iran will retaliate with missiles that will hit Israel's air bases before they return. That's what I said. That's not what you said that I said. All right? Israeli aircraft didn't attack Iran's nuclear infrastructure. In fact, Israeli aircraft, as they approached Iran within 100 kilometers, got targeted, painted by Iran's air defense, causing the Israeli pilots to panic. This is according to Alistair Crook, who's a well-placed, former MI6 officer. And they released their missiles over Salahuddin province in north of Baghdad, inside Iraq. These missiles did not reach their targets. Most of them were shot down. The ones that hit targets didn't accomplish anything. So it's a world of difference, isn't it, there, Mr. McQuaid? So the Israeli attack failed, didn't succeed. So why don't you think maybe the Iranians would not need to escalate at that point in time? So let's stop putting words in my mouth. Nothing pisses me off more than that. All right, if you're going to ask a question, do your frickin' research and get it right, because that's not what I said. Now, we just had a long talk about Iran's nuclear posture. What part of that implies Iran is afraid of Israel? What part of that implies that? Iran's not backing down from Israel because of their nuclear bomb. Iran has gone on notice with public statements, it's equivalent of declaratory policy, that we've made the decision to produce a nuclear bomb if Israel pushes us in that direction. And this bomb can be produced in a matter of days and deployed against Israel in a matter of days. So your question is baseless. I'd suggest you rewrite it and resubmit it. But I don't see Iran backing down from Israel because of Israel's nuclear threat. Iran blasted Israel with several hundred missiles that hit their targets. And if Iran strikes Israel again, it will be thousands of missiles that hit their targets. That's not indicative of a nation that's afraid. If Iran withholds firing missiles against Israel, it's not because they're afraid of Israel. It's because maybe they've taken a step back and look at the strategic picture and say, we're beating Israel. Israel's dying. We don't need to do anything more. We just need to let Israel sit back and kill itself. There was an Israeli brigadier general that went on TV last week that said what I've been saying all along. The Israeli army is defeated. They can't, they're getting wiped out in Gaza as we speak. Gaza. They're going back and fighting over the same piece of terrain for the third and fourth time. And they're getting wiped out. In Lebanon, they can't advance. As I said, Lebanon's prepared every square inch of Hezbollah's prepared every square inch as a potential ambush site. And the Israelis go forward, they're getting slapped down, beaten, kicked back. They haven't taken a single village. A single village. Why does Iran need to attack Israel? Israel is defeating itself. Desertion rates are 12 to 24%, depending on which unit you're talking about. 12 to 24%. Soldiers are openly rebelling, say they refuse to go either to Gaza or Lebanon. Reservists are backing out. The country's in a virtual state of near civil war. They're falling on one another. A former prime minister says the greatest threat to Israel comes from within Israel, these right-wing fanatics that are currently governing. Netanyahu is getting ready to fire the minister of defense. And then what happens? What happens when he tells the army to commit suicide? Does the army turn on him? Now we have a civil war. So the Iranians are sitting there and they're looking at it saying, my God, the Israeli economy is tanked. $67 billion hit in a war that's costing $100 billion. The world can't afford to do it. The world has abandoned Israel. The world hates Israel. Everybody's talking about the need for a Palestinian state, which is what this was always all about. Israel's lost. Why does Iran need to do anything? Iran doesn't need to defeat Israel. Israel's defeated itself. So maybe that might be what's driving Iran. The fact that they've won this war and all they have to do is let it play out.
It's always iffy, to say the least, when somebody paraphrases another person instead of quoting them. Because even if there's no malicious intent, they may not be accurately representing what the person said. So I was thinking of that George Galloway question. That guy, or I think was a guy, was paraphrasing Galloway, but maybe not accurately.
I don't think it was accurately because I went on Galloway's show and I talked about this issue with George and we were in full agreement. So I'm not picking on George. I'm just saying I don't know what he's saying he said, but
right.
What it is, yeah.
Hish Omer in Sydney, Australia. You've said that if Israel invades Lebanon, Hezbollah would mount a counter-invasion and take the fight to northern Israel, but this hasn't happened yet. Do you think this is because the Israeli invasion has been limited up to this point, or has Hezbollah been weakened to the point that it can't sustain an invasion of Israel?
I think Hezbollah is kicking the crap out of Israel. If you think differently, you can articulate yourself better than you have in this question. What part of Israel is getting the snot stomped out of it? Don't you understand? They haven't taken one goddamn village. Okay, their army's in total revolt. Now, you're Hezbollah, and you have a plan I don't make shit up. You have a plan that says you're going to strike into northern Israel. Do you do it when Israel's strong and ready, or you do it when Israel's defeated, in retreat, and weak? Do you think maybe Hezbollah will wait until Israel begins a panicked withdrawal from the south, when the Israelis are scrambling for, trying to fix what's gone wrong here? Maybe that's the time to strike. I mean, Hezbollah will do what Hezbollah will do. Like I said, I don't make shit up. Look at the tunnels Israel has uncovered, tunnels leading from Lebanon into Israeli towns. And if you think that Israel's uncovered all of the tunnels, you're higher than a kite. I think Hezbollah will do what Hezbollah is going to do when Hezbollah wants to do it. And if that includes striking into Israel, then they will do it when the time is right. I'll let Hezbollah make the decision when that happened. But quit saying you said and this. I'm not going to use the F word. I promise not to use it. But I do this for a living. I did this for a living. Okay? I do analysis for a living. When I say something, it's not because I'm making it up or pulling it out of my ass. I'm saying it because the evidence points to that. All right? So quit saying you said something. All right? Talk about the analysis, the underlying analysis. Talk about the context in which I said it. But I'm tired of people like the other question. You said this. I very rarely say something and just leave it at that. I usually preface it with a long buildup. There's usually a lot of analysis attached to it. I know the question's very short and all that stuff, but that's just sort of very lazy and disingenuous on your part. You guys caught me in a bad mood. I'm not feeling very good, but I'm just not going to tolerate this anymore. If you're going to ask me a question, quit cherry picking shit. All right.
All right, we can call it a night if you want, Scott. I have only one more question that was submitted in advance in text form and a couple of voicemail questions, but we can save it for the next time.
No, we can do it. I'm here, but I'm just saying I'm not in the mood for bullshit anymore.
Oh,
I'm just
no, it wasn't because of your mood. It was because we had said about only doing an hour, but I'm okay to keep going if you are.
All right.
All right. Let's see. I don't know how to pronounce that, but it's a female Dutch name, and she lives in Sweden. Did Zelensky say...
Sorry, that's funny.
All right. Did Zelensky say that if Ukraine is not allowed to use long-range missiles, they will develop nuclear weapons themselves? This was mentioned in a Dutch podcast, and that Ukraine certainly has the capabilities and knowledge for that, and that it is probably a matter of weeks. Is this correct?
Well, he did say that if he's denied the ability to defend himself with long range missiles, that then he would fall back on nuclear weapons. And he immediately turned around and said, "I'm misspeaking. I'll never do that. We signed the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty, etc." Contrary to popular belief, Ukraine does not have the ability to produce nuclear weapons. They can't enrich uranium. They don't have centrifuges. They don't have any of the enrichment mechanisms in place to do that. And to build these from scratch is very, very difficult. So they can't enrich uranium. They could do plutonium extraction from the spent fuel rods that are there. They do contain plutonium, but again, that's a capability that Ukraine doesn't have the dedicated infrastructure to do. So to do this, they would have to operate in violation of the Non-Proliferation Treaty or withdraw from the Non-Proliferation Treaty. Either one is detectable and not going to be tolerated. Russia is concerned that Ukraine can make a dirty bomb, that is to take some of these spent nuclear rods and mix it up with high explosives. But I've talked about this before. I'm actually one of the few people who's actually investigated dirty bombs. The Iraqis were seeking to make dirty bombs, and they had plans to do it. And even the Iraqis, after they did everything, realized that a dirty bomb doesn't do anything. It's a stupid weapon. It's a dumb weapon. So there's nothing to this whatsoever. Ukraine doesn't have a nuclear weapons capability. They don't have a nuclear weapons production capability. They could make a dirty bomb. That would be a detectable event. This was just Zelensky doing what he does best, speaking from where the sun don't shine.
Here's a phone call from, I think, Virginia, or at least that's
correct.
I am correct. Once in a while, I get it right. How you doing?
Absolutely, Jeff. Good evening. Good evening, Jeff. Good evening, Colonel. Thank you very much for taking the call. This is VSAR. I called a few times earlier. I wanted to ask the Colonel. So,
what Colonel?
I'm not a colonel, but thanks for the promotion.
Maybe he means me.
sorry. Sorry. Actually, yeah. I wanted to ask Scott. The traditional Israeli security concept, their strategic doctrine, as I learned it, proposes 3 core pillars, like deterrence, early warning, decisive defeat of their enemies, as the basis of Israelis' ability to cope with security challenges in their surrounding. Now, post October 7th, they attempted to reestablish deterrence, but post Iranian attacks, and given the distance and after the October Israeli response to Iran, what is your opinion? Does Israel have any ability or possibility to reestablish deterrence in this case?
No, they don't. It's over. I mean, first of all, a lot of it was based upon mythology, perceptions of Israel's capability. Deterrence is 100% perception based. You deter by people being afraid of what could be. I don't think Iran is quivering in its boots anymore after Israel's attack. So Israel's lost all deterrence, potential over Iran. Hamas, are you going to bomb them more? So there's no deterrence against Hamas right now. And the same thing with Hezbollah. Israel can't defeat them. So there's no deterrence. The Israeli intelligence, the early warning aspect of it, totally failed on October 7th. They've not gotten it right with Hezbollah. They thought that they were shaping things by assassinating Nasrallah, using the pagers to take out middle management, and they made assumptions about the collapse of Hezbollah that haven't panned out. Hezbollah is alive, well, and living, and continue to resist. And the same thing with Iran. I think they overplayed their ballistic missile defense capabilities and are waking up to the reality that Iran possesses ballistic missile strike capability that Israel can't defend against. And so all 3 of the pillars are collapsed. And this is one of the reasons why Israel's in such bad shape today, because they're not going to beat Hamas on the battlefield. They're not going to beat Hezbollah on the battlefield. They're not going to beat Iran in an exchange. Their economy is collapsing politically. They're in crisis. There's not one positive thing out there about Israel that anybody can say. They're losing by every measure. They're losing, and you're not going to restore that. Even if Israel is able to restore peace, they'll never be in the position where they are the dominant force in the region again. That day is past.
All right, here's a voicemail message from our new friend Bob in Beirut. You remember Bob?
Hey Scott, hey Jeff, how are you guys doing? Scott, you said in the previous podcast that Iran had no reason to retaliate and that they have already set up deterrence. So what could be the reason for Iran's next attack on Israel, and how would this affect the Israeli army? Would they be forced to partition part of its capabilities to deal with the new Iranian front? Thank you, Scott.
Another Scott, you said, but he didn't know that he's not supposed to say that anymore. He left the voicemail message.
Look, if Iran retaliates, it'll because Iran has made certain strategic decisions. One possibility is that Israel hurt Iran more than Alistair Crook, myself, and others believe. That some of their missiles actually packed a punch and hit things, and that Iran now feels the need to set the record straight with Israel in terms of punishing Israel as part of its deterrence. I personally believe that there's no reason for Iran to retaliate. I think Iran has established deterrence supremacy, and I think we're in a situation where Israel is collapsing. I mean, one reason to retaliate is to further the collapse. You know, so it would be a limited scope retaliation against, a single target deck, maybe an airfield, maybe, something different. I don't know. But from my perspective, and again, this is just purely as an outside observer, there's no reason for Iran to retaliate. Iran has made the point that it can hit Israel anytime, anywhere it wants to. Israel is collapsing. There's no reason for Iran to, do something that might change the political calculus.